Well, Mike, thanks for coming on, man. I love talking to you more than probably anybody because we've had some killer conversations. But I'll give you a quick intro. I don't even know if I can do your intro justice, honestly. I mean, you played on tour, you coached tour players, been on the Golf Channel, you're in every magazine possible, top 100 teacher. I mean, when it comes to performance, you're kind of like my go-to dude. So I like this is awesome for me just to like kind of chat because we've had such good conversations about stuff, and you've opened my eyes to some things. And I'm like, we got to get on camera and just talk about this, and so we can together kind of solve some problems for people. And I just think that's what it's about. We're always trying to help. We're trying to help people, trying to solve these problems. But the problems I'm always talking about are performance issues. I'm not really into the there's a place for it, the technique, which we'll talk about, but it's like for me it's more about what does it take to perform and really reach that human potential, and that's always what I'm most fascinated about. And that's where like I get so passionate with these conversations that we've had. And I just thought this would be cool to do a little thing like this. I mean, I would have come to Florida to see you, but now it's actually getting a little warm out here.
I bet.
So, I just want to jump right into it. And what do you think is the biggest mistake players make in training, and why do they have such a hard time taking their practice to the course? Like, what do you see?
Well, I think, Kyle, and thanks for having me on. It's great, and the conversations we do have are always really, really great. And I learn from you just as we learn from everybody, and that's the beauty of our business. I think with performance, most people don't understand where they need to be, at what phase they need to be, and have an understanding of how to get better. I think that's the biggest thing that we face. Everyone's looking just for that quick fix, or when my swing gets this. And it seems that it's funny that we, in our business, we deal with two types of players. We deal with the field player who says, yeah, I just kind of, I'm not really mechanical. I just kind of feel it, which he really doesn't know what he does. Or we deal with the mechanical guy who says, once I get this position, then I'll move on. And once I get that position, and it's a never-ending search.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, that's tough though. And with what's going on out there, like how we train players is got to be a little bit different than just doing some swing drills and thinking that's going to be the end all.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's, when we talk, like you coming as a tour player, that's really why I'm fascinated, because you're taking that knowledge into, like, you've played at the highest level, and now you're able to kind of share that stuff. And I just feel like so much of golf is, and that's why I'm trying to start doing some of these videos and stuff, because so much of golf is, if you change your swing, you're going to just all of a sudden be magically better. But that's such a small part, in my opinion.
It is.
So like if you're taking players and they're listening to this, I mean, what are some things that are being missed in practices and training? So I hear what you're saying about knowing what you need to get better at, but like where's really lacking in players training?
I think, some has to do with understanding their swing mechanics and what works for them. And that might not be streamlined or the norm.
Mm-hmm.
I think practicing is huge, understanding how to practice, what to practice. And to me, it's sort of like learning a trick. I mean, I don't want to make this sound as simple as I'm going to make it sound, but it is. It's like when the kids bounce the ball on the club. When they first learn to bounce the ball, they do it 2 and 3 and 4 times. And every time the ball falls, they don't go, okay, what did I mechanically do wrong there?
Mm-hmm.
They just learn the skill, and the skill keeps getting greater to where they're moving it, bouncing it between their legs and up over their heads and bouncing it off the butt of the club. So I think practicing a skill, understanding what your game is, what your tendency is, it just seems to me a lot of instructors look for that, what cosmetically is the problem. It doesn't always translate.
Right. And I push, a big part of kind of, I guess, my training framework is I really pipe technique and skill are different. And you can totally disagree with me in that case, but like you said, in that case, there's a technical aspect when you're bouncing the club. I mean, how your wrist moves, I guess, but like you said, the skill of that is different. So I always, and I get in, when players are like, oh, I'm not at a level where I can learn to curve the ball or hit it high or hit it low. I'm kind of scratching my head like, but you got to learn that, because if you don't learn what makes the ball go left or makes the ball go right, how in the world are you ever going to know what to do if it happens unintentionally?
Absolutely.
I mean, are you on par with that? Or,
Absolutely. And, it's so funny because, and it doesn't matter at what level, from juniors to the average club golfer to the mini tour to the tour players, that they so quickly, when they hit a bad shot, I'll ask an open-ended question like, what do you think happened there? And the fact that they go right to, well, I think I did this mechanically, or I think I did that mechanically, or this is what I felt I did. I always say to them, first of all, if I just said to you, describe what happened with the ball. Well, I hit behind it. Okay. So don't forget everything else. Now, what are the factors that could make you hit behind it? So what they do is they're really answering questions in their head that's really fictitious. They didn't feel that movement. Mm-hmm. They just used the Rolodex of either what they saw on TV or what they heard or what their buddy said, and just said, this is what I think I did. Because how many times, and you've seen it with an average person, they hit it fat, and I'll go, well, what do you think you did there? And they go, I picked up. Okay, so if we look at this, physics tell us if we picked up, the club doesn't get to the ground. But that's how quickly they do that. And it's I see it at every level. So instead of getting so bogged down into trying to break up, what mechanically did I do? Let's step back, look at the ball flight, look at what happened, and then make an assessment. I think it would be much better. And I think that's also a part of helping them become their own coach. I think it's also a great way for them to do some self-discovery if they know how to do it. And just as well as I do, my biggest thing that I feel why people don't improve at every level is, the first is they don't know the process to learning. And then the second thing is, and training, I mean that by training and learning. And then the second thing is they misdiagnose constantly. They don't look at the ball flight. They don't look at what happens. I mean, the ball's only going to curve 9 ways.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, how much of that is, just kind of, I guess I'll go another way with this. I mean, I'm thinking about what you just said, and how often do you see people jump in and try to answer for, like, especially kids? Because that's what I'm dealing with mostly. I know you work with a lot of kids, a lot of competitive players. Mm-hmm. When they miss a shot, I mean, how, like, you see people jump in right away and try to give them the answer. And I've had kids where their parents will be with me in a lesson, and I'll ask them a question, and they'll look up to their parent. And I just try to explain it. Unless you're really on the professional level with a caddy that knows what they're doing, this is pretty much the only game you can't be coached while you're playing. Yeah. So self-learning and that self-discovery and being able to answer those questions, I think is huge. And that's something I think you opened my eyes to more than anything. I had extreme aha moments when you were talking about players learning to hit it off the toe, hit it off the heel intentionally, so they understand what it feels like. They know how to correct and what that difference is. So if you do it off the toe, how do you move that more to the center? And just things like that, because when you can answer that, and it's as simple as, I got to watch you work with Josh Hart a little bit, and it was, I mean, the guy stripes the ball, but, I think he was just maybe a tinge off, and you're like, just get a shallow divot cut, and he's flushing it. But when you know how to do that, it's like, I mean, that's so cool.
It's weird because as instructors, we go through phases of training, and we go through our technical phase, and then we're constantly learning. And what I've seen, which is so cool, is that you watch the legendary guys who've taught for 100 years, guys like Butch Harmon, guys that have just done it, and you listen to them speak, and it's so simple. And you're not expecting that. I'm expecting something that I'm going to walk away going, wow, I've never heard it put that way. That's amazing. And it's not. It's something that Now he has the knowledge. He has every tool in that toolbox. But it's like you start in this one direction and you work full circle. And when you finally become a complete coach where you can help people get better, it's taking something complicated and making it simple.
Right. Well, and I think, and everybody likes to talk about John Wooden, like nobody's ever heard of him or something. But everybody, every coaching conference I think I've ever been to, somebody brings up John Wooden. But the truth is that was the same thing. I mean, there was even these guys that wrote a book, and they went to his practices, and they're all excited about it. I think that might have been in another book or whatever. And they said the same thing. They're like, we're expecting to hear this wowing factor. And, like, the guy barely talked. He would talk for a minute or two, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like I think some of the people out there trying to make them a name for themselves and sound really good and impress people are making it way more complicated than it ever really needs to be.
Sure.
I mean, you think of that. A question I'm dying to ask you, as some of you played on tour, when was your last year on tour, if you don't mind me asking?
I mean, my last big event was 2000 U.S. Open at Pebble. After that, I was kind of wanted to go a different route and get into coaching because that was my fascination with the game. I mean, I think everybody has a fascination with the game. Mm-hmm. And mine was why and how things happened. So that's it's having that kind of mindset is great for becoming an instructor. It's not so good for trying to play.
Right. Now, the game is different now. And I mean, I even make the comment when I played in college, I think right now, and believe me, I'm not anywhere close to being stronger, but I'm probably 60 yards farther off the tee, which makes the game a lot easier when you got wedges in your hands. So the question, I guess, like that's just been burning in me is, are players really better today than when two like even Tiger in his last book about the Masters, he talks about I was hitting a 280 way by everybody. So I don't have 4 irons and 5 irons in your hands coming into the green. I mean, like the scores are going to be higher.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's just. What do you think?
I don't think they're better. I think they have better information. So the people who did what they did didn't know why they did it. So the guys who bombed it 280, they didn't know why they did it. They just kind of did it. And I think that's the first factor. I think you have also, I think they're better athletes. I mean, golf, before Tiger wasn't really cool. And now you got a lot of the kids who would go play football or play baseball are now playing golf. Mm-hmm. So I think obviously they're bigger, they're stronger. I think that, as I said, I don't know that they're better. I just think we have more of them.
Right. And then leading into that, like with our newer age, our technology and stuff like that, I've kind of seen a change just in my time through the game with, people get technology, especially like with me, we're indoors for half a year. And players are seeing the TrackMans and the tracers on the ball. And a lot of times they get hung up on the ball's curving a little bit. But we're in perfect conditions. We're on a flat lie. We're hitting into a, no wind. And people are getting so hung up, I think, on this idealism of perfection. And my thing to them is always, listen, how often are you on a flat lie for one with no wind in a controlled environment? So this notion of, and I mean, maybe you don't see it, maybe you do, but like, I feel like everybody's got this idealism of golf. Like it's hit it straight down the fairway, hit it on the green, make or miss the putt. And to me, I mean, golf's like war. It's chaos, man. It's awful out there. It's misery.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I kind of, like when you saw me with Josh, learning to hit it off the toe, the heel, the center, I think it's not about perfection. It's about managing variability. It's about managing yourself. It's about managing not just your swing, but your emotions during times. My biggest thing to the mini tour player and tour player is, your career in this game, and as a former player, is so true. Your career in this game is going to be measured by how well you play when you're off. It's as simple as that.
Because everybody thinks it's about how great you play, that like when you get on fire.
No.
Right. I mean, it's more the long.
Really not.
Yeah. So, I mean, what's like if you're talking to a player and you're trying to help them manage their expectations? Because I think that's a problem in golf that needs to be solved. Is players need to learn how to manage expectations for the game so they don't basically lose their emotions. I think, to me, I think it starts a lot there. Like, what's your like? How do you help players with that?
Well, I mean, it comes back to controlling what you can control, and that's just yourself. And I think the other thing is to have an understanding. I mean, I think we're misled in golf. I think these younger kids, because when you watch golf on TV, you are seeing the guys who are playing their best at the best time of their careers. You know, I mean, Jason Day won yesterday, but follow Jason Day as he was going through his struggles. You're going to see some crazy things. You're going to see, wow, you know, I've experienced that. I've went through that. So I think it comes back to education, educating them again that they're playing their very best.
Mm-hmm.
So their expectations think that they need to play like Jason Day or whoever's the top of the, and then that goes back to, you know, speaking of that, it's funny because who's ever the hottest player when we start talking golf instruction, you know, of course we're going to swing like him.
Right.
I mean, you know, he look at what he did. I mean, we got to swing this way or we have to swing that way. So I think the expectations is having them understand what they can control and what they can't control.
Right. It's interesting you say that too, because this is a story I tell a lot in terms of like just me learning as a coach. And when I first got V1 in my video system, I was going through and downloading model swings. Of course, I had Tiger. Everybody had Tiger back then. You know, this was like 2005, and I was like, I'm gonna go down the top 10, and that's who I'm gonna get. And I think Mickelson was probably number 2 or Vijay Singh. And I'm like, Mickelson's long and too much lag. I don't want him. Vijay's hand comes off the club. I don't want him. I started getting through the 6th or 7th guy. I'm like, wait a minute, something's not right. Like, I'm throwing out all these top 10 players in the world. Best players in the world. Why am I throwing them out? There's got to be something behind that, like what they do. And that's kind of where, even back then, I'm thinking like, this just can't be like, if you swing it like this, you're going to be better because this guy swings like that guy swings like that, and they both got private jets. Tell me which one's wrong. You know, so it's, you know, that's where, again, I start seeking out people like you and Brady and Sean and, you know, because you guys are the ones that really started opening my eyes to like, wait a minute, like, you know, how we're training players and how they think out there and how their skill is in managing the ball. It's not about being precise with the technique. And sure, that's a part of it. I'll never say it's not. You know, if the swing's way off or something like that and you can't hit it on the face, there's issues there. But, you know, again, I think that's a small part of training that players need to be educated on, because a lot of players I first meet think that's the end all. They want that swing here. They want that swing answer. They're searching for it. You know,
everyone wants Adam Scott's swing.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and there was a cool article, I don't know if you saw it recently, about the kid that Tony works with. Was it Bobby? Mm-hmm. Did you read that article? I thought that was a cool article, though, because, I mean, that's a perfect example of somebody that goes on that search, got away from what they did so well. So I guess leading into another question for you is, like, how important is it for players to stay on course? I mean, do you really see swings changing much? And should they be, like, just kind of reinforcing every day what they do well?
Well, you know, and for great players and players that get to a certain level, you do see this every now and then. I'm actually just started working with a kid, phenomenal amateur career. I mean, this kid finished 5th in a major as an amateur. He just graduated college, and he's been struggling, and he's kind of going to – I guess his other coach got out of the business, so he's been kind of searching for a coach, and we went back and forth, and we were talking, and I think what really resonated with him is that a lot of what I tell those guys is stuff that I went through. So when I turned pro, I all of a sudden felt like, you know what? I got to be something different. I got to do something different. So what happens is you start feeling like you need to act different, you need to think different, and you really, really lose sight of who you are. Having said it's a double-edged sword, what I mean by that is also by getting to where these great players get, they're never satisfied. Mm-hmm. They don't just go, okay, I have it. So it's understanding that I have to improve, what areas I have to improve, never at, and I see this a lot with, and this kind of happened with this kid too, at the expense of your strength. Okay, because the way I look at it is you can work it to improve your weaknesses, but never at the expense of your strength. I mean, right. I can name any player and you can give me their strengths. I mean, Rory McIlroy. Okay, so he struggles with putting. Guess what? Make Rory number one in putting that week. If he doesn't drive it like Rory, he does not win. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's the same thing. Mike Weir, he can pick up 30 yards. If he doesn't wedge and putt it like Mike Weir. So I think that's so important. But, yeah, I mean, you like I said, the great players have gotten to where they've gotten to by experimenting and never being satisfied. But it's such a fine line. That's why a great coach is so important.
Right. And, you know, so if you dive into that and really, I mean, what's your take? I'm sure you get this question a lot. I get it all the time. What's the difference between a Jordan Spieth and I don't want to call out your boy here, but like a Fat Power? You know, a guy that's not like winning weekly. I mean, he's on tour. You know, he's out there. He can make cuts and he's making money, but he's not like, you know, he's not winning every other week. You know, what's the difference between those guys? I mean, do you think it's just one guy hits it better?
No, and that's funny because I had with one of my web guys, we had this discussion because he's getting frustrated, and I said, you know, is there any shot that Jordan Spieth can hit that you can hit? And he said, no. I said, there's not a shot, a high fade, a low draw, any kind of a knock. I said, no, I can hit any shot. I said, okay. Is there any shot you can hit that he can't? He said, well, yeah, I averaged 328 last year. He said, he didn't hit it that far. I said, okay, so let's think about this. If I was a wide receiver and I told you I'm going up against a guy who I'm taller, stronger, and faster, but I can't beat, what would you say? And he just looked at me and said, it's in your head. I said, all right, well, you just answered your own question. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a self-belief. I think under the gun, when you have those periods through your career where they're defining moments that can spring you to the top or blow it, I think everything has to happen in your perception of when you blow it, because you're going to blow it. Mm-hmm. Right. You know? So it's the difference between somebody starting their own company and the company fails and they go, oh man, I just lost everything. I don't want to do that again, so I'm going to stay here. Or somebody who blows and says, I'm looking for the next one. What did I learn from this? I'm going to go get some more money. I'm going to start at it again. So I think it's how they view failure that then in turn separates them when they're in that position again. They know how to handle it and they perform. It's a performance issue. It's not a skill.
Right. And that's where I'm really keep pushing you. That's what I was hoping to kind of get out of you a little bit, is that performance side of things. And, you know, that leads to probably one of the most open-ended questions I'll ever give you. But why do players choke? Where does that come from?
Yeah, I think that comes from, you know, I mean, golf is I don't think you can define choke. I think if you were really going to define choke, you would have to really sit down with each player, because there are players that go, you know, and then again, what's your definition of choke? To me, it's thinking of something negative while you're hitting the shot. Well, I've been in a position before where I've just made a bad swing. I was committed. I just made a bad swing at the wrong time. Mm-hmm. You know, it's sort of like when somebody says, oh my man, he missed that 4-footer on the last hole to get in the playoff. Well, he missed 2 of them earlier that day.
Right.
It's just that this was the deciding factor. I mean, so you can't really, I think, view it that way. Only the player's going to know that. But if you do have those people that do choke, I think at the heat of the moment, they've questioned themselves. They've thought about, they lose confidence. And to me, confidence is just thinking about what you want to do when you hit the shot. And people that are not confident, they live in the what I don't want to do.
Right. Do you think that goes back to how players are practicing and training, though?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, there's. I'm trying to think offhand. What's the name? There's a book that's really good. I can't think offhand. You and I read a lot,
Right.
but I think it's so true, not just in golf, but in life. And what people don't realize is that every action you make at every second of the day determines if you're moving closer or further to your goal. Now, it's so minute that you can't see it, but you do it over a process of a year and you see it.
Mm-hmm.
So every time they hit a shot, what they say to themselves, how they view the shot, because people think, well, I'm not moving, I'm not moving further or closer to my goal. I'm just moving in a straight line. You never move in a straight line. I don't care if it's finance. I don't care if it's your performance. I don't care if it's your self-image. Everything that you say to yourself, everything that you view is building or breaking. So performance is huge on when they're practicing. Each shot they hit is either building their performance. I didn't say, now here's the key. I didn't say every good shot. I said every shot they hit, how they address it, good and bad, determines if they are building that Jordan Spieth self-image.
Right.
So it's never, well, I didn't react to the shot, so it's not good or bad. I'm staying level. No, the brain doesn't work that way.
Yeah. So, this is the good stuff, Mike. I love this, man. Because I mean, like I would study military stuff and Navy SEALs because I look at like this is probably the most elite kind of group of performers in the world. I mean, they're doing it under the most excruciating pressure. And that's when I was talking to you and you start talking about Navy SEALs. I was like, see, this is why I like this dude. I mean, we're so big when it comes to that. But, that's where you start looking at like how somebody like that trains versus how golf trains. And golf is all about, and an instructor too. I think it's more of an instructor trying to make themselves feel better. But it's like, oh, it's okay. Here's another ball. Let's puff up the lie. Type thing versus, all that chaos and trying to make it struggle. And I had a player the other day that, I mean, I was putting her through the ringer with practice stuff and just seeing the frustration. I'm like, this is it. This is that moment. This is what we want. We want to struggle and do this and learn this and fight through this now, because when it gets crunch time, like you want to have gone through that. Like you don't want to first experience that in competition. But I think we're trying so hard to make players get that pseudo confidence on the range or whatever, where they hit it behind a tree. Oh, let's kick that out or whatever. Versus let's make that harder. Let's put it on the stump, make par.
And I think I think explaining to people that struggling, getting frustrated, feeling confused, that's all a part of learning. In anything, if you're a little kid learning to read for the first time or doing arithmetic or learning to drive or learning whatever. So I think if you embrace the fact and understand it, you don't have to like it, but I think just the mindset of embracing it and going, okay, it's part of it, I'm going to fight through it, just relieves the tension. It just, settles you down. And I think the other thing is, as coaches, I think our toughest battle is to help people find that, because the other side of what you believe in and what I so strongly believe in, we can't tell them right off the bat. Mm-hmm. So here's a great example. That player that I was talking to you about, this amateur, he's now professional and he's got conditional on the web, but he's been struggling. He came to me and the first thing that he wanted was, I got to fix my backswing. Look at it. See, something's happening midway. I feel the club flipping over, and I can't hit it from there. And I'm looking at it, and I'm going, well, it's impact first. Okay, we gotta work on that, and that's really an easy fix. But if I went right to that, I would have lost him. He would have went to some other guy or some other guy. He would have searched until he got that guy that says, let's rebuild this or that.
Right.
So how you go about it, what I did is I got him to, we addressed that issue. And then I got into the root cause of it. And then I got into explaining to performance, how you train. I go, guess what? He's like, it feels great now. I said, that doesn't mean it's gonna work. That's a different animal.
Right.
Yeah. So it comes back to you and I and the rest of the guys really educating. That's what I think the biggest problem I see is not the instruction as much as the education. They just and when I say education, it comes back to instruction.
Right.
They want a position.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So 100%. So what pops in my mind as you're talking about that too is I think golf is probably the hardest sport to simulate pressure. Like in basketball, I mean, you can, and time is actually one I found to be really good. So in my indoor building, I put a timer up and would do like 2-minute things and try to get a certain amount of chips and, close or whatever. And so time's kind of clicking down, and there's a leaderboard there that can help. So I found time's a good one. But, basketball, you got competition. The other guys, I mean, you can do a little bit of that in golf. But at the end of the day, I think golf is the hardest one to simulate training under pressure and kind of having a little bit of that chaos training. So, like, what are some things you would help players do to kind of really put them through the ringer on their own, I guess, is what I'm going for. Because we can do it as coaches. I mean, we can heckle them, throw stuff at them. I shoot people with Nerf guns, so that kind of stuff. But if a player's on their own practicing, I mean, what can they do?
Yeah, that's a great question. That was one of, when I got into looking at the performance side of training, I don't know that there's anything that you can do that that's going to really create it. So then we do the best we can with that. You're doing the stuff. I'm doing very similar things. But I think that understanding when they're out there in pressure and learning themselves what happens to them under pressure. Because, I mean, you have the stimuli and then you have a response. So if you can lengthen that in between the stimuli and the response, instead of the kid going, well, yeah, I blew a 3-shot lead, come in, I finished bogey, 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 I just got nervous. Okay, but what happened? What started to happen to you mentally? And then obviously that transfers into the swing, but they just look at the swing because I got stuck underneath. Why did you get stuck underneath? Well, I mean, when you dig down, they were afraid of going left, so they got under it, held it off.
Right.
So I think understanding that, being aware instead of just, trying to find an answer, being more aware of did you start walking quicker? Did you start breathing quicker? And I think, I see that all the time when somebody comes to me, usually for the first time, and I'm sure you've had this before too, and they start hitting a couple good shots because they're going to let everything go. They're not going to think. They want the instructor. And I'm like, well, what do you think of that shot? They're like, yeah, I like that. I wish I could do that. I said, okay, so I don't have to change your swing. I just have to show you what you do mentally and physically. Now, if you hit that shot out there and you say, you know what? Yeah, it's 3 feet from the hole, drew 5 yards, but I want to hit a fade. Then we got to rebuild your swing, change some mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
But people they're not aware when they hit a good shot because they can tell me everything they did wrong when they hit a bad one.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll go, when they hit a good one, I'm like, so how's that? They're like, yeah, that felt good. I'm like, yeah, what happened there?
Right.
Yeah, I really liked that. I go, you don't know what you did. You don't know the difference.
Right.
If you don't know the difference, how are you going to repeat it? But it's and I think coming back, I mean, really, and this is why I love our conversations, because I think both of us stress each other's brain to really think about it. I mean, you talk about golf too. Well, Navy SEALs, I mean, the pressure, they're getting live ammo shot at them in the real situation where they're not in training. So, that's
definitely
very similar.
But again, though, I mean, when they're preparing for, and I've read all the books about all the missions that are famous, and the raid on Bin Laden, they built a replica of that bunker and they practice every single scenario possible. I mean, they had a chopper go down that day. I don't know if you know that story. I'm sure you do because you read that stuff too. But they had one of their two choppers went down, and they trained for that. They train for, like, what do we do if there's
Yeah.
four guards in the front and chopper goes down here? What do we do if we land here and there's only one guard but four in the bunker? I mean, like, they came up for 3 or 4 months or whatever they trained for, day in and day out, for every situation. And if I had to label something that golfers do, is they don't train for situational stuff near as much. What do I do if I'm
Yeah.
3 under par and I'm not used to being 3 under par and I got this shot? What do I do if I started off 5 over and I need to climb back? Or what do I do if I'm in this thick rough and I need to get it around this tree? I mean, stuff to really make players think. I think if I had to label it, that would probably be my thing. I think players don't do near well enough. But, I mean, if there's anything you see, like, what do you see, like, players not doing? Like, I guess, what's the biggest mistake people – what do they do? What are they not doing in training? Like, your average competitive player, because this is geared more to competitive players trying to perform their best. But, that player, what are they missing in their practice that's not helping them perform under pressure?
Well, I think, once again, that – and I'm big on the educating them because they're not educated. You talk to most players, even tour players, and I'm out there, I'm out on tour with watching the guys on the range, and they think that if they get a move that they want, what they're going to do is, I'm going to hit a bunch of balls. I'm going to hit 1,000,000 balls and I'm going to groove it.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't work because that doesn't transfer. I mean, you'd have to get the movement first, but that doesn't transfer into performance. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I see. Can you do that? Can you do that movement off an uneven lie, different distances, different shots, different shapes, and then with an outcome? So I think that's the biggest thing that I see.
So and that
they're not educated.
Right. And I'm interested in this too. And I've never actually tested this. I'm sure there's people that have, but like TrackMan is all based off a flat lie. Would you agree?
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, what are TrackMan numbers supposed to be if you have an incline or your balls above your feet, balls below your feet, if you're in rough? So like when the people get hung up on these TrackMan numbers, I personally tell them, like, listen, if you can't change the numbers, it doesn't matter what the numbers are. Like, there's going to be a time where you might need to swing 10 degrees to the left. You might need to swing 10 degrees to the right. You got to do it in 2 different swings.
There you go.
That's that variability I think you're talking about. And that's, I think, like, I keep kind of giving you credit. I mean, you opened my eyes to that more than I think anybody. I mean, that was like one of the biggest aha moments for me. Like, if you don't know how to go that, swing to the right, then swing to the left, like, how are you ever going to perfect that middle? Because we learn by variability. I think Michael Hebron, I think it is huge on that too, right? Like, he's been kind of an innovator in our thing about just that self-learning and how we learn. And I think that's a big thing, is learning how skills acquire. And I had this conversation with, a good, young, talented player, and I'm like arguing with this 11-year-old. She's like, well, I need to get my technique perfect before I get confidence. And I'm like, listen, your technique's going to get perfect when you can learn to fade it and draw it. She's like, well, I just want to hit it straight. I'm like, well, listen, to learn to hit it straight, you're going to have to learn how to fade it and draw it.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, you hook everything. So if you can't,
that's exactly what I'm talking about. The guys on tour, the same thing. They think if I can just get to a point, and it's like, no, it's not.
Right. Yeah. I mean, do you think they're even just the average golfer? I mean, do you think there's a level where people shouldn't be learning to do that? Because, I mean, even the average golfer goes, I'm not at a level where I should learn how to curve it or hit it high or hit it low. And I'm like, well, that's the game, man. Like, you got to learn that,
Yeah. So. It's obviously a skill. You have to train them in the skill set that they have. But I would say the majority of the people, they should know how to do that, or at least experiment with doing it, because they might find one suits them better than trying to hit it straight. Wow. When I try to hit a draw, I seem to hit that shot and I hit it, it's a little draw, or I'll overhook it, but I never hit it right. Where when I'm trying to hit it straight, I'm missing it left and right. So now I know where my misses are going.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, we have an intention behind that shot, right? When we're intentional about what we're trying to do, I think it's always going to be better than trying to swing mechanically perfect and hope the ball goes straight. But if you're like, I'm trying to draw this, you're working off what you want the ball to do. The body's going to react a little bit better than trying to perfect the motion. It's like almost reversing the order, right? Working off, this is what I want the ball to do. Because, I mean, you and I talked, too, about when you put players in, that player, I think you told me a story about a player that you had that was getting too mechanical. You just threw him under a tree and said, hit it under the branch, and then they striped it. Because now we got to change.
Well, and I think their whole approach is completely different, because I do that to a lot of players where by my range, where we have the range, there's a tree and there's a situation where I can pretty much do whatever I want, hit it under or over. And it's funny because I'll videotape them. I'll go, okay, we're on the golf course. This is on the range. You have 150 yards. I want you to hit me your stock shot going to that pin. And I'll videotape them. And you look at the way they go through their routine. And then I'll go, okay, here's the scenario. You're under this tree. You got to hit a punch cut and run it up on that green. And their routine, now I'm not talking about number of waggles and everything else. Their intention and their routine is completely different. I see them staring really hard with hard intent at more of the target and down of what they want to do, where when they're doing hitting the shot in the off the tee to that one, you can tell they're kind of going through a checklist of, okay, here's what I want to do mechanically. They're spending more time looking at the ball than at the target.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, it's just interesting how that all changes. And, I remember when I first met Mike Bender, he was telling me about when he interviewed Jonathan Bird when they first started, and he was asking all these questions. What do you do in this shot? And he goes, what do you do if you're 150 yards and the pin's, you're basing the fairway and the pin's right in the middle? And he's like, that's my hardest shot. Because I don't know what to do. Do I hit it straight?
Yeah.
Do I draw? Do I fade it? So, but again, I think that just goes to the point where, when you're not intentional about the shot you're trying to hit, even if it's just a straight shot, I'm going to hit it straight, I'm going to hit it high, whatever. And you go more to the mechanical side of it. I think players are always better when they hit shots.
Absolutely.
Quick question on that too, because nobody wants to believe me in this, even though there's tracers now on tour. Does anybody actually hit it straight out there?
No.
It's nobody wants to believe me. They're like, tour players hit it straight. I'm like, are you kidding me? They even have tracers on the TV now. The ball curves, man.
No, it doesn't curve as much as it used to. And I know you're too young. I mean, I'm 48, and back in the day when they were playing the Bellata, they curved it out. They curved it. Pretty much every player curved it like Bubba Watson. That's how much curve, because that's what you had to do. But I don't know. I have a few tour players. I have friends who work with tour players. None of them are ever teaching them to hit it straight. I don't know where my miss goes if I'm hitting it straight.
Right.
I have to know.
Yeah. Is there a predominant out there right now? Do the majority of players fade? Do the majority of players draw?
I think the majority of players fade. It's funny to me that, tour players, they're being a tour player, a former tour player. It's a funny breed because they'll when you're struggling, you'll do anything. So if Dustin Johnson's fading it and he's having some success, man, I'm going to try to fade it. Maybe I should try to fade it. So, but I would say the majority is a tight little draw. It doesn't curve as much as it used to, but I think what I would say to somebody who says, well, they hit it straight, I go, no, they don't. It might look straight, but they know where their miss is going to go. So then again, that's not straight. Right.
All right, but, Mike, I mean, we could literally talk about this all day. I don't want to keep but, one thing I think that'd be cool, because you told me some pretty cool stories about your time on tour. Do you have a moment that just, you can kind of remember being in the zone? I like positive memories. I don't want to bring out any of your bad stuff. Like the time you told me you just hit it in the stands because you were playing so bad. But what was a really good moment, and a good feeling, when you've almost felt in the zone and what that feels like?
Yeah, that's kind of funny. So I'm a 21-year-old kid. I'm trying to Monday each week out there. And back in the day, Doral used to be an event that you can Monday in. And no one got in Doral. Doral was like the 5th major, they called it, because it was, now it's a world championship. But so here I am, there's 1,000 guys trying to Monday, and I'm a 21-year-old kid, and I go in and I end up Monday qualifying. Now I am just ecstatic. I mean, absolutely ecstatic. This is it. This is my moment. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to win this event. I'm going to get my card. This is it, man. And I go out the first day and birdie the first hole, and this is it. I mean, this is my destiny. Well, I end up struggling, frustrated. I end up shooting 76.
Okay.
So I'll never forget, I was sitting there, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm going, I was laying in bed at night, and I'm going, wow, that was miserable. I mean, not shooting 76 wasn't miserable. Just being out there, because it was just miserable, because I didn't get to enjoy everything of the PGA Tour because I was just grinding. So I had this talk with myself. I said, you know what? Chances are you're going to miss the cut, because I look back at the previous cuts and there were all 2 and 3 under. Mm-hmm. So chances are you're going to miss the cut. I said, you know what? I'm just going to go out tomorrow, and I don't care if I shoot 90. It's my first tour event. You always want to remember your first tour event. And my brother was caddying for me, and I went out there, and I just really, and I've heard people say this, and I never really believed it because I'm not that type of person, but I started on the back. I'm standing on 9, which was my 18th green, and I'm standing on a tee waiting for the group to get off, and I hear somebody in the gallery, because the gallery started growing. He's 6 under for the day. So I'm kind of counting back, and I'm like, oh, man, I'm 6 under for the day. Now I'm looking, and I'm like, all right, what's the cut line? So I'm going to make the cut. So I end up pulling it like 70 feet from the hole. I hit my first putt like 12 feet, but I end up making the putt and making the cut. But to me, that was such a great lesson because I got out of my own way. Mm-hmm. My perspective changed. It was the same guy, and I really got to enjoy my first tour event. And I ended up shooting 70, 71 on the weekend and finishing like 52nd or something like that. But, it was a learning experience. It was fun.
And that's cool. I mean, and that's it's almost kind of like one of those movie scenarios, where you just you were there. I mean, I think that's awesome. But you weren't even really aware of it, were you?
No. And I've never had that before. I mean, I've shot 62. I mean, in qualifiers or, U.S. Open qualifiers, stuff like that. I mean, I knew exactly where I was. That's just how my mind works.
Right. But that day.
But that was the first time I committed to totally, I don't care. And I was laughing, and my brother and I were joking. And it was I just got so into, I just didn't care. I just wanted to look at the people and look at the cameras and see my name on the leaderboard and all of that. And where you pop up, they got your picture and your name, and it just didn't even care about the score or anything. It was just.
Well, I think that's a pretty powerful lesson too, because I think that over caring, I don't know, that's probably a bad way to say it, but it's like when we put so much value on what it means and it becomes that struggle, it's like miserable, versus enjoying it and almost having that whatever happens attitude. It almost always trumps that I'm going to try really hard and overthink about it, kind of overthinking, over trying, if you will.
Well, especially you can't control it. That's the frustrating part of it. You can't control it.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. I mean, this is always good stuff. I'm like over here taking notes as you're talking, because you always give me good pearls of wisdom, man. But Mike, I appreciate everything you've done for me, and be able to share this with other people, and I think is really cool because my mission is I'm really trying to educate, like you said, players more on the performance side, because my eyes have been totally open, and that was the search. I always look back when I played is why is this dude better than scoring better than me, or why do I go out one day and shoot 66 and the next day is 76? That journey is fueled me. you know, and that's why I bug the crap out of you all the time. And like, Mike, like, tell me about this, man. What do you know? So, I mean, I love it. Like, I just can't get enough of it. I mean, literally, I could talk to you like for hours and hours about this stuff, but I want to let you get back to your day off, and I appreciate you being on with me.
Good stuff, man. Really good.
Cool.
All right.